Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us again in this afternoon's edition of Conversations. It's been quite a while, if I'm not mistaken, probably around a month since we were last here. So thank you for joining us again. For those of you who are joining us one more time and who've seen this before, you'll be familiar with me and my partner, Lippy. This afternoon, we'll be having a very interesting conversation with someone who's been very instrumental in the life of FranklinCovey here in the Philippines. So for those of you who are not familiar, this session is a live session that we have where we pretty much tackle almost anything under the sun. Lippy, would you agree?
And what other better way to say it?
And so literally we have interesting conversations about different topics that you, our viewers, our audience members bring up, or anyone who's joined us in previous sessions. So again, my name is Paolo. I'm a facilitator. I'm a coach with the Center for Leadership and Change and FranklinCovey Philippines. I'll hand you over very quickly now to Frederick Lipio, my partner in crime here in Conversations.
Freddy. So hi guys, my friends, everyone else calls me Lippy. I am a credentialed coach, facilitator, and certified facilitator here at FranklinCovey Philippines, amongst many other things. And this session today, I am so excited now because our guest today has been a guest I've been batting for ever since we started this conversations, right? And
Yes.
And a little bit of credentials, right, of our guest today. And I'm so excited. Our guest is the Vice President at FranklinCovey Philippines. She's an executive coach, senior consultant, and accredited FranklinCovey facilitator. That's playing it down. She is the master facilitator for FranklinCovey programs here in the Philippines, right? She conducts workshops in leadership, personal effectiveness, productivity, execution, strategic planning, and team building. She's well experienced. I think she's done it all, and she still continue to learn and evolve. And one thing I knew about her formally before I pass it over to you, Paul, to tell us a little bit about her personally. I knew that she was the first Filipino trained, trained by Stephen Covey himself to be a facilitator here. But it was only in our pre-session today that I found that she was the first in Asia.
That's a very interesting point, isn't it, Lippy? And how did that strike you?
Wow.
So, without holding you for much longer, I guess there are only a few things I would add about our guest this afternoon. So our guest this afternoon is someone who has not only had a long history with FranklinCovey Philippines, and I think, as Lippy put it, that would be downplaying it. Our guest this afternoon has been instrumental, or was instrumental, in actually bringing the content and actually bringing FranklinCovey, and back then it was known as the Covey Leadership Center. And I won't say much more because that would be dating it too much. But she was instrumental in bringing the Covey Leadership Center and bringing the license here to the Philippines. So that in itself is quite a legacy, and that in itself is quite a history to talk about. Personally, I've known her as a close friend in the family. And then, of course, I've gotten to work more closely with her in the past few years after transitioning out of the more traditional corporate life and moving here to work in FranklinCovey Philippines. So Lippy has already mentioned how our guest is a master facilitator, all of the credentials, which I won't go through. Perhaps one of the things that has not been mentioned is that other than being a formal or technical master facilitator and even the one who certifies pretty much everyone that comes through the doors of FranklinCovey Philippines to be certified as a facilitator, or as a FACI, as we lovingly call ourselves. Our guest this afternoon also serves as a trusted confidant and consultant for pretty much anyone in the organization when it comes to consulting about facilitation, technical skills, or sometimes even about more personal things, interpersonal matters and the like. So I think that's a pretty long introduction that we've given you, Lippy and myself. Perhaps what we can do now is hand you over to our guest. So our guest this afternoon is none other than Ms. Lirio Mapa, who has been instrumental again in bringing FranklinCovey to the Philippines. And perhaps we'll give you a few minutes, Lirio, to introduce yourself to our audience.
Virtual applause.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Lippy and Pa, for such generous, kind introduction. But something that maybe some of you know, but some others don't know, is aside from that, I'm a mother of 8. and a grandmother of 12.
Wow.
A great grandmother of 1. I have one great grandson. Okay. Of course, all my children know the 7 habits. All the grandchildren, except those who are not yet of age, to take the 7 habits for teens. So they all know. Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. So that's a very different dimension, but very interesting one. So in that, I guess, personal introduction itself, Lippy, I recognized 1, 2, 3. Was it 4 generations right there in that introduction?
Of course, the great granddaughter is only 2 years old.
still blissfully ignorant of what a generation is, actually. So, Lippy, shall we introduce our session for this afternoon?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
As usual, when we talk about these conversations, our production team has curated your comments, your questions, and your feedback from wherever it might come from. That goes into the FranklinCovey CLCI grab bag of questions and comments. And they've curated, sort of like a theme and the topic for today. And I'm excited. So we have not seen the questions, and we brought on Lirio as a guest to come and have a conversation with us about the questions. And okay, we have a really great production team who spot on chooses the theme and questions for our guest and for the afternoon. So I'm excited today.
And Lippy and I were particularly excited about this afternoon because without taking a dig on Lirio for any sort of generational gap or age, we were excited for the potential difference or diversity in terms of opinion and perspective, not only in terms of age, but also in terms of professional experience. Because Lippy and I have had our own professional experiences, and then Lirio has had her own. So I think this afternoon session will be particularly insightful and exciting, not just for us, but for you as well. So for those of you who are not familiar, Lippy already mentioned, none of us, the 3 of us, don't know any of the questions that will be coming up. Some of the questions may be easy for us to answer. Some maybe not so much. And as we mentioned, we pretty much tackle almost anything under the sun. There will be some things which we're more comfortable, more well-versed at, and perhaps some things where maybe we're not. And for this afternoon, we're looking forward to having interesting conversations there. As we've said in previous sessions, we encourage you to join us as well. If you have anything to share, please do so in the chat box. We will from time to time look into the chat box, and as Lippy mentioned, there is a 4th man to this team, and a very important 4th man, and that is our production team. And they're constantly looking through the chat box, and they post in our own back room any interesting questions that come up in the chat box. And so we can take those, and those can take precedence over the questions that we will be pulling out of our grab bag. Lippy, you look like you have something you want to add.
Yeah, just to kick off our discussion and to acknowledge, I'm personally curious about this question. I mean, earlier we were talking about generations and dating yourself, and it's no secret that Lirio, you have stayed not just relevant and effective, but even at the edge of the whole training and development space here in the Philippines. So my personal question to you is, what have you done to keep yourself at the forefront? And you're still facilitating.
Yes, I
right?
do. Yes, I do. I still do. I just ran a certification workshop and another 2-day workshop and retooling a group of people. Yeah, I still do. Online.
no, but see, I know some of your peers that I've gotten to work with, they even don't like doing the work over this online thing. You seem to have transitioned. So, I'm curious, what have you done? What has kept you at the edge so far all these years?
I'm ready for lifelong learning. I know that age does not matter, Age is just in your head. It's just a number. Age is just a number, okay? Oh, look at me. I don't look at me. Okay, so for example, now I've been doing the 7 habits for 32 years. 32 years. Okay.
Wow.
So I had version 1, version 2, version 3, now version 4. I take, for example, doing a workshop via these new platforms. I'm very comfortable with Zoom. Now, trying to learn, okay, I learn a bit of MS Teams, WebEx I haven't tried, but it's a process. Learning is a process.
It's true.
And if you really want to, if you have a goal, you get there. You get there.
Wow. What?
Amen to that.
And Lirio, just to follow up, if I may, if you have a goal, you'll get there. So what has been your goal all these years?
Okay.
Big question.
Yes. I believe I've achieved my professional goal. Okay. It's my mission statement. My mission statement that really drives me. Okay. It's a mission statement that I learned when I was 16. But it was confirmed when I did my 7 Habits workshop. The first 7 Habits workshop I attended in 1988. It was really confirmed. And what is that mission statement? Well, even I was 4th year high school, I was in Assumption, okay? And we were told, you better start thinking about your college course. You're going to enroll into college. But I said, what course? What profession do I really want? Fortunately, in Assumption, our foundress, Saint Marie Eugenie, said this: every person has a mission. God gave you your talents, your abilities, and because of those, He must have a mission for you. You gotta find that out. So I prayed. I really, really, really prayed hard. Lord, thank you for all the gifts that you've given me, all the opportunities you've given me. Please tell me, what do you want of me? How can I return? How can I make use of my talents and abilities? Yeah. And in Assumption, we would have adoration, we'd have benediction. Okay? Yes. Benediction every day. And so every time I go to benediction or adoration, I would say, Lord, teach me naman, tell me naman. Okay. And the image that would always come, is the image where I am explaining something to my classmates and their eyes pop up. It seemed like they understood, because I was very good in math. Okay, and the teacher would tell me, okay, Lirio, put up your solution on the board. Now explain it to your classmates. Then I would see their eyes pop up. That's the image. They said, many had so many bright classmates, but apparently the gift that was given to me was to be able to express, to articulate what needs to be learned in ways that are understandable by my classmates. And so what's that gift? I understood it as the gift of teaching. Yes. So my father didn't like that. He wanted me to enroll in business because he said, you're good in math, you should take up business. Okay, first year, I enrolled in AB Commerce Assumption. AB Commerce, as in to follow my father.
Yes.
Assumption, yeah, AB Commerce in Assumption. To follow him, but little by little, then the nun told me, take up education. You tell your father, after you are finished education, you have a job here. I told that to my mother. It was my mother who convinced my dad that it's better for me to be a teacher than to work in a corporation na maliligawan lang.
But it's so funny, Lirio, how
they were so protective of me. Why? I was an only child for 9 years. So very protected. So they prefer my mother preferred that I teach rather than work in a bank or anywhere exposed to men. Okay.
I love how it's so funny that
funny.
That your mission was teaching, and that was clear for you.
From the
then
beginning.
from the beginning. And then your dad wants you to go to business. Now I'm hearing the nuns wanting to go into education. And then realizing for the rest of your career, you were in big business as one of the teachers inside of it. So
That's
it
true.
was just,
Yes,
just
yes.
amazing.
It's still, so I really saw teaching as a vocation. A
Nice.
vocation, it's a calling. And therefore, when I took up the first 7 Habits workshop, I took in 1988, and we were given the guidelines for developing a mission statement. Very clear, very clear.
I want to share to everyone. This is an example if you put the principles to work, people. I mean, each person has their own process. For sure, the way that I came upon my mission statement, so far from Lirio's story, but what I'm getting from this, it's so personal. And Lirio, the way you've anchored and made use of that has just propelled you, and kept you so, as you said, so not just relevant, effective, and at the edge, but as you said before, so beautiful and up to date. Even up to
I would
this
say
day.
it's an anchor.
It's
Your
an
mission
anchor.
statement is an anchor. It's not only a vision you want to get there, but it's really an anchor, and you are at peace because you know that what you're doing is what you were meant to be by the Creator.
Yeah.
So that's at peace.
Nice.
At
Right.
peace,
Nice.
yes.
Nice. Let's
Quite a
take
story.
advantage of Lirio in her mission, and let's look at the questions. Let's see what
Right.
the people have got in store for us. Yeah.
Let's make this conversation a part of that big journey, that mission of Lirio. So, Prod team, shall we
Thank you,
have our...
thank you, Lirio, for coming on the.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lirio, for coming
just
on the
one
show
more
and for
sentence
making
about
this little
what-
clip
yeah.
part of your journey.
What gelled only when I did my mission statement, because teaching is a profession.
Mhm.
But what's the goal? Why? Why do you teach? You want to make a difference for people, but why? What's the ultimate goal? And it is this. Look, the ultimate goal of every Christian, I would believe, is to love and serve God, right? But I love and serve God by loving and serving the people He sends to me. Who are the people who sends me? Not just family, friends. Now, my participants. Okay.
True. That's true.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you.
To make a difference in their lives, and for me to help them discover their gifts that God gave them and their personal mission. This is why I love the 7 habits, especially habit 2. Habit 2.
All right. Okay. I'm sure you will be helping a lot of people today.
Yes.
As our conversation, with our participants and as it gets shared. Thank you. Okay, without further ado, I know our production team has prepared so well for today. let's get to the questions. All right. So let's see. Okay. This is a good one. Distilling all of the wisdom that we have here. How can I practice habit 5 properly? What's habit 5? It's seeking first to understand, then to be
Then to be
understood.
understood.
Any tips? And here's a little bit of backstory, right? It's already hard to listen empathically, but it becomes way harder when you do it and the other party does not reciprocate.
That's true.
May kwento
Okay,
to.
okay.
There's a story. So how can I practice habit 5 properly? Any tips is the question.
Seeking first to understand before seeking to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I found that difficult at the beginning. I realized that it is not only Filipinos who found it difficult. All over the world, it's difficult. Why? When did I discover? When with version 4, they had to put up skill cards, practice cards.
Right.
Yeah, so for those who are not
Yeah.
familiar, if you join the latest version, of the 7 habits, when you go through our experience, we have what we call skill cards, meaning there are prompts and there are practices of what to do, what you can practice to be able to practice this skill. So you're telling us, Lirio, before, this wasn't a thing, these skill
No.
cards.
The skill cards are new. There would be practice sessions, but the skill cards are new, and then there are additions to it. All right. it has to be based on this principle or this belief, no, that to build good relationships, you've got to understand one another. Two people have to understand one another in whatever relationship it is, okay? And so what better way to understand the other person but to listen? Unfortunately, we have all been, especially you're a teacher, you're a manager, when someone asks you a question, immediately you give an advice. You give an answer. Oh, well, that happened to me. Okay. So you immediately we do that. But what I really learned in the 7 habits, empathic listening. Empathic listening means you first clarify if you understood the other person. And the way to do that is to describe what you see as the person's feelings about certain situations. So there is a formula in empathic listening, as in, okay, if somebody told you, I lost my job. Siyempre, maraming ngayon. Many are losing their job. So what do you say? I really think you feel so terrible about the situation today, right? Because it has caused you to lose your job. So just to reflect the feeling, to check whether I've understood what the other person is telling me. The point there is to make the speaker feel understood. Feel understood. And then it says, yeah, yes, I feel that way. Okay. Then you ask a clarifying question. Would you like to tell me more? What losing the job means to you? Ask a clarifying question. Okay. And then continue to until sometimes people just want to be listened to.
That's true.
Not to be advised.
Yep.
Not to be advised.
Amen.
Not to be, yes. So your question was, how do you
practice properly?
Properly empathic listening. You just describe the feeling as you saw it, as you felt it. No. Because somebody else can tell you, hi, I lost my job.
Oh, it's the best thing that could have happened to that person, right?
At least that's the way it seems.
It seems to me you're really so happy about losing that job. Really? And then you, now I'm free.
so there's the formula, and then there's reflecting back the feeling. And then there's asking the clarifying question.
Yes.
Okay.
But the questions we ask should come from what the speaker said. Not what is in my mind. Not what's in my mind, because I could ask, why? What job was that? Oh, where is that question coming from? It's coming from my head. Right? Okay.
It could not be relevant anyway what the job was to what the person's feeling.
Yes.
Right?
Or why did you lose your job?
Kasalanan pa niya.
Coming sa akin. Coming from me. Okay? So that's empathic listening. And the conversation can go on but if the person says, Lirio, if you were in my place, what would you do? Then I can now respectfully seek to be understood. Okay. That person's already seeking advice, seeking options, etc.
Right.
But until that comes, the person just wants to be listened to.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone comes to you and gives you stories about herself, what they want and all that, how they feel. Then afterwards, they say, thank you for your time. Thank you for your listening. That's it. That's all they want. Yeah.
That's all that they wanted, right?
That's true.
And you see, when we respond with empathy and just ask clarifying questions, the person speaks, and as the person is encouraged to speak, he or she hears himself. And on their own, they may find the solution to whatever problem that is. Because they are listening to themselves. They're articulating how they feel.
Yeah.
Maybe, what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like really just giving the person space.
Yeah.
And Lirio's last part of, it because I'm a professional coach, it sounds to me like a lot of good coaching that's happening. It's allowing the person to vent and let it land for the person.
Well, in psychology, it's called non-directive counseling.
Okay, there you go.
Non-directive counseling.
Non-directive counseling. You don't direct, you just ask good questions.
That's pretty clear right there.
That's pretty, yes.
And this is why the psychiatrist has this divan, you lie down and then asks you many questions and then charges a lot. Okay?
Yes.
But it's really non-directive. Helping the person understand himself, find out what's really deep inside, and then exploring options, helping the person explore options. Okay? And if he has 3 or 4 options, you explore the consequences. You ask him, if you do this, what will it get you? What will it get you? Okay? Helping the person find the consequences of specific options.
Yeah.
If I may add, I think if I were to read through the question again, it strikes me as the one who brought up the question having had an experience or probably several experiences where he or she actually tried to practice habit 5, and yet there seems to be a strong sense of frustration. So it says it's hard enough, and then what happens, or it becomes harder when the other person does not reciprocate. So I think this is the last part is where I'd like to jump in, because I definitely agree with Lirio. It's all about reflecting back feelings and allowing the other person to feel understood. Interestingly, just a while ago, probably just an hour ago, my wife and I were having a conversation, and she said something like, I think that's what most mothers feel, or they just want to be seen, or they don't feel seen. And in my head, I was thinking, that's true. And I also feel that it's probably something that many people nowadays feel. It's probably not just about mothers. I think most people want to be seen, or want to be seen more than they feel they're seen. And I think I'm relating it to this because really that's what Habit 5 is all about. Earlier, Lirio talked about the formula, and really the first part of the formula is just the intent to understand the other person. If that isn't enough, then going back to Lirio's introduction where she talked about mission or her end in mind, my recommendation would be to look at or ask the question, what is my end in mind in this whole conversation? Particularly when it comes to that part of when the other party does not reciprocate. Yes, there's frustration, but I think, and I bring it back to end in mind, because I would assume the end in mind in the conversation would be to come to some sort of mutual understanding, or at least to come to some sort of effective realization, like Lirio put it. And so I think you just go back to just that end in mind. At the end of this, I want to have mutual understanding. And then Lirio brought up the idea of consequences. And then perhaps at the point where the frustration kicks in, you kind of just want to go, you know what? I don't feel like you're understanding me. Why don't you just do this? Perhaps ask the question, if I did this, what would happen?
Yeah.
Because if I were to put myself in the shoes of the other person, it would be, oh, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to listen to you either. Let's just drop the whole conversation.
From my experience, if the person really felt that I understood him or her,
yeah,
the desire to listen, it is contagious.
Increases. Yes.
It is contagious.
Yeah.
When you truly listen to someone, sooner or later the person will say, that's interesting, no? Okay. What do you think about it? They will ask you already.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a sign. That is when they start asking you what you think or what you would do in your case. That's a sign that they are ready to listen. Before that, I would never advise. I'd never advise unless asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
And that's why, because you said, what if the other person does not listen? That means you have not listened.
Or they're not yet done.
That means, you're not yet done listening. And you probably, why can you say the person does not reciprocate? Why? Do you want the person to
Agree.
agree with what you're saying?
Yeah.
Then that means you've advised.
Yeah, and it's
You've
not empathic
advised.
listening. It's
No, it's
it's
not.
autobiographical,
No longer.
as we call it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
and again, if this statement connects with you, if you're listening in, if it lands for you, this is also a challenge of self-awareness. You find it becomes way harder when you do it and the other party does not reciprocate, but contagious. And there's a psychological term. It's called mirroring, right? Whatever energy and approach and attitude I bring all has an influence on the other person that I'm speaking to. So for all you know, the person could be reciprocating. You're just not aware of what you're trying to do to this person, right? Notice what I'm saying, what you're trying to do, rather than having an intention to understand it.
Yes.
So the person might be reciprocating. You're just not seeing what you want because you're not being mindful of what it is that's happening in that moment.
Yeah. And I think the important part there is if you look at the 2 parts of habit 5, seek first to understand, then seek to be understood. Understanding is different from agreement or following. So it might be that the other person actually does understand. Maybe they just don't know to express it,
And
but
then,
maybe they're not following. They have a
and the
different
way,
opinion.
yes, and the way to do that is after you sought to understand, assuming now that let's say the discussion is about a problem that like in the organization, like it's a situation, and the person has expressed, yes, other person has expressed it, and you've tried to do empathic listening, and then after that, before you seek to be understood, ask the question. I have heard you. Would you like to hear my point of view? I mean, bumusina ka muna.
I think that's the whole point.
Bumusina ka muna. Pag sinabi niyang, no, never mind. Okay, that's all right. That's fine. Huwag kang mamimilit. Another time. Another time might come.
Everyone listening, big tip to ha? Big tip to. Hindi na maganda. Bumusina ka muna.
Yes, agree. And sometimes perhaps that's the secret, di ba? Kasi kung wala yung busina, mukhang inaaway mo, for example, di ba? Versus yung may konting, pwede bang ako naman? Or can I say something?
Yeah, otherwise, you just look as if you're the guy or the girl who just barges in, gives unsolicited advice. Di ba?
Yes.
Kamusta naman yun? Papasok ka lang. Alam mo, dapat itong ginagawa mo. Out of the blue.
Tapos di ba? If I were the other person, isipin ko, teka lang. Ako yung nagkukwento dito.
Yeah. So those are some solid tips. Okay, thank you for that. For being able to practice habit 5 properly.
Just to
I want to throw one thing, Pao, before you go.
Go.
And this is my offering to everyone because I've struggled with this already. How can I practice habit 5 properly? I would focus on the practice word of this statement rather than the properly word.
Agree.
Because if you put pressure on yourself, it has to be, Naku, Lirio taught me how to do habit 5. She put it so clearly in a formula. I've got to do it right.
The beginning, the very first thing is in the head. In your head.
Right. Yeah. So practice it here first.
Your intention muna. Ano bang intention?
Yes, what do I want?
Okay, what do I really want? No? And also, how do I see this person?
Yeah.
Kasi our biases will influence the way we listen to this person.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's, I have grandchildren living with me. And then the tendency to preach is always there.
That's true.
So I have to say, look, clear, no? The intention is, to understand. The intention is to understand, not to preach, not to argue. Okay.
And I think Lippy mentioned this earlier. I think self-awareness is the key. And if not only self-awareness, at least a sense of honesty. Because at the end of the day, if your intent is you want to give direction, then at least be honest with yourself about that.
Sabihin mo na lang.
Oo, hindi siya habit 5, di ba?
Just say it. This is my intention. This is what I'm seeing. I want to be able to give you a bit of direction here.
Yeah.
Sabihin mo na lang.
Yeah.
Yes. So maybe it's that. Go back to the intent and be clear about what the intent is. So we hope that helps. Follow-up clarification daw.
Okay. Mukhang ano to.
Follow up.
Because this seems like a live
Live question.
Live. So
Yeah.
follow up, yung question daw is not immediately na nag-reciprocate during the other person sharing. Then when you come with a problem naman, dun mo nafe-feel na baka hindi daw niya really reciprocate yung empathic.
Okay, so in the relationship, para hindi balanse.
Okay. Lirio, what do you think of this?
If it's my share, ako na ngayon magsasalita. No? I'm the speaker now, and the other person doesn't want to listen.
O parang ganon.
It's not listening.
Or baka nag-a-advise ka agad.
Okay. I would not push. Kasi when the other person does not listen, you don't feel like talking, right?
Yes.
You don't feel
Walang
like
gana.
talking. Walang gana ka.
Yeah.
Para kang you're talking to a blank wall. And the tendency is, no, not ready to listen to you. So I wouldn't push.
Yeah.
I wouldn't push. Maybe we should talk about it another time. Yeah, right?
That's true. Because when in my experience, also when I coach other people or even at home, there's such a thing as right timing, and my wife always reminds me na we can talk about it, but now is not the right timing. Pwede mamaya, pwede get. But that's one perspective. There's a right timing thing to it. I agree.
And I think, if I may add, earlier we said go back to the intent, no? In terms of nung tayo yung listener. What I'm hearing here is separate scenario, entirely different conversation, maybe a different day altogether. So kung ganon, then maybe what I'd advise is, if you've had several experiences na ganito and it feels like the other person does not listen, maybe state the need up front and say that when you sit down and you say, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 30 minutes? I need someone just to listen to me. That's all.
Okay,
Makinig ka lang.
that's fine.
And then if it doesn't work, then maybe as Lirio put it, then don't force it. Maybe it's just not the way that dynamic works.
Or just to challenge this, or if this relationship is not all that important, alam mo yun, this is a topic that an example, if it's not a strong relationship like a close friend or husband and wife thing, but it's a coworker that I just want to be able to relate better to.
Parang komportable lang.
Baka hindi siya talaga ganyan. Huwag mo siya pilitin na gawin, di ba? You can just go to someone else. Maybe this person, is not the best, or is not just in that space to do it.
Or it may not be the right time.
The
right time.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to jump off what Lippy said, if it is an important relationship, then I think the relationship would have at least that space enough for you to say, right now, what I really need is just for you to listen. And then don't worry, later I will listen to your advice. I think if the relationship is strong enough, there's a way that you can say that.
And then as they say, pick your battles.
Yes.
Lirio, tell us a little bit more about that. How do we do that?
A long time ago, when we were newly married, I am a person who likes color combinations and all that. And here, why is that your pants and your shirt doesn't match? That doesn't matter anymore. Pick your battles. What things that are really essential, that's important to discuss is fine. Okay.
All right.
Okay, well,
pick your battles.
Yeah, pick your battles. Be clear about the need, and I guess gauge.
Your intention, your desire, what is the impact? But frankly speaking, sooner or later, natuto rin na rin siya. Natuto na rin yung husband ko mag-match.
So it's another way of teaching him, di ba?
Slowly lang naman, slowly. And then eventually, he would ask na, ito bagay ba to? Okay. Yan. Ngayon, okay na.
Ano pala to?
Ang tagal-tagal ng years yun.
How to train your husband 101. Number one, don't have too quick expectations.
Tsaka pick your battles talaga. It's not important. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Lirio, and thank you, Lirio. Your story has touched people, personally who are watching us. And we have a question. Thank you, Maria Lourdes, for putting in it. And the question is, I like this question. So let's be practical about this. Lirio, the question is, how are you able to cascade your goals to your family?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's like a little bit more. Yeah, no, but that's the question. Yeah, how are you able to cascade your goals to your family? It's interesting. Thank you.
That is a question I also asked another parent years ago. Our eldest son was in first year high school. And they had what they call a parent enrichment program, PEP. And then they group people by groups, not small groups, most groups of 10 for parents. And there was one of the parents there. They were they're quite elderly now, okay? And they had 13 children. And then this child, I think, was about maybe their 8th child already. And for us, it was our eldest. And I asked that question, same question. And I followed his advice. You know what he said?
Oh.
Okay? Lirio, don't worry. Just love them. Just love them. They will get your values by osmosis. By osmosis, he said. By osmosis, they will learn. Because if you love them and they learn in turn, they love you, they will not want to offend you. They'll follow you. I followed that advice with my husband, and I followed that advice. Sooner or later, you will see it. And now I was so grateful that I also see them passing on similar values to their children. Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Of course, I have 8 children. They pick up some things. Some of my one picks it up more than the other, etc. But in essence, it's there. But take for example, the value of I don't know what you call it, spirituality. I don't want to call it religiosity or piety. It's really spirituality, because spirituality is expressed on different forms. Thank God, it's my husband is the leader there. He is more of a leader there. Huh?
Wow.
Yes. And true enough, all my children got it. And many of our grandchildren, some of our children, most, I would say, of our grandchildren, all. I can now count, all. As a matter of fact, here at home, we say the rosary together with 3-4 grandchildren together with, every night. So no problem about going to mass and all that. It's the modeling that counts.
Yes.
It's the modeling that counts.
So it's less about what to do to cascade the goals. So it's to live it. Live it.
To live it. And if we have to explain some things, we explain some things. Yeah. Okay. And if hindi pa nakukuha, be patient, sooner or later. They get it. Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from you, Lirio, is that you mentioned love, just love them. And I think it begins with love, it ends with love. And at the end of the day, I think what you do becomes their model. And I think while this was not deliberate on any of our parts, especially now in this environment that we're in, where they are constantly exposed to us, most likely, or at least much more than we're accustomed to. For some of us, it's almost 24/7. For those of us who are working from home exclusively. For those of us who are on hybrid, it's still much more than we're accustomed to. I think the things we do and where we put our attention, where we put our time, becomes their guidepost more than anything for what they will do later on. As Lirio put it, it's probably not going to stick at once, because especially if it's younger children, it's probably not going to make sense immediately, but they will get it in time.
Yeah.
Oh,
They will.
They see what
Yes.
mommy and daddy is doing.
Yes.
Just copy it. That's what my son's doing now. Just
Right.
copying what.
And oddly, it comes out in odd ways. But when you're aware enough for the patterns, you will realize that yes, they are pretty much copying you in different ways. Of course, they don't work on a computer.
Yes,
But
yes.
they do it in their own world, so to speak. They interpret it in their own world.
Right. And if you have to correct correct. It also starts in the paradigm and the way we see them. Okay,
Yeah.
the way we see them as really good. This happened many, many years ago when our youngest son, and some of you know him, okay, our youngest son
Some of you
was
know me.
2
Some
or
of you know
3,
me.
2 or 3 years old, and they get into that negative age when everything's no. And I was already working then, and I actually didn't take a full-time job until he was 1 year old. 1 year old. So he was about 2 or 3, and then I'd come home and say, "Hi, bad boy." So that time my parents were living with me. Bad boy, and then naughty boy, bad. So the maids, everybody in the house. No one will call him a bad boy. No one will call him a naughty boy. Okay, if he does something wrong, tell me. I will take care of it.
Yeah.
And then I talked to him. I said, "Don't believe them. You are a good boy.
Mhm.
I know you are a good boy." Every day I'd tell him that. Of course, there will still be times when one time he hit his sister.
Oh.
And his sister cried. How do you feel? Happy. Really? You see your sister crying. She got hurt. Would you like that happen to you? Informal na. Okay. Will you do that again? We just think that they don't understand,
Oh,
but they do.
you'll be surprised.
Surprised. Okay.
Yeah.
But of course, I learned it little by little also, slowly. It was only starting the 5th child, no more spanking. I learned it slowly. The tendency for young parents, sleepy, our young parents is to treat our children the way our parents treated us.
Mhm.
Okay. But both of you are young, and thank God, maybe your parents are already more okay. Especially Pao, I know your mom. Maybe your mom was very blind. Okay, but I was very strict with the first 2 children because that's how my parents were with me. Okay. And I had difficulties. I encountered difficulties because of that. But when I learned more, because I took up education, so I learned more and I practiced. I understood more little by little. Okay, I realized different ways of dealing with them.
Yeah.
The last 4 never got spat, never got any physical. Just talk to them, help them realize. And true enough, no teenage problems with the last 4, none. Oh, they would follow you. Yeah, honestly.
Wow. All right. Thanks for that. I'm learning a lot.
And I think
Thanks for that.
one of the things I'm hearing from Lirio there is you said it was a process as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that some parents maybe don't see is that we can learn almost as much, if not even more, from our kids as much as they can learn from us if we're only open to learning it, listening, understanding others. So just to go back to the original question, it said the question was, how are you able to cascade your goals to your family? And so I think what I've heard from Lirio so far is, while Lirio talked a lot about the values, behavior, I think whether it's about that or more concrete goals, like even monetary goals or life goals. I think at the end of the day, it's really about what you do more than anything.
Yes.
Yes, you can mention, and yes, there is value in mentioning and telling at certain times, but there has to be a sense of congruence with what you do and the way you live your life. And that's what
I think that's the bottom line here. Because now I'm playing back in my mind, examples of how we're able to cascade your goals. So from Lirio, we're hearing an example of really just being, let me rephrase that, of really being present and loving, and osmosis was the magic word here. Osmosis,
yes.
Right? And this is authentic to who Lirio is and her husband and their family. Because I know of another family, they're a little bit more structured. It's like all their kids know how to do strategic planning year on year.
Mm-hmm.
But it still doesn't take away any of the, yes, they still love them. Yes, they're still very present. And that's very much authentic to who the parents are. Very structured, and they use it to their advantage. And what I'm also getting from here is, it's not about changing who you are. It's about figuring out how you can bring out more of what you've got to the table.
And then they, for example, I know the 7 Habits really helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very much, helped a lot. I know one of my children, there was a time, and they pick it up, They pick it up, and they notice when you're living it and you're not living it. Well, yes, there was a time when in Covey they would sell you the calendars. Calendar, and every month would be one statement, another statement. This one is my youngest son, because he learned the 7 Habits when he was 8 years old. The youngest son, okay, because that's when I started living the 7 Habits. He was that age, okay, and he noticed it. Now, one time, after even if you're trying to live it, there will be lapses. So one time, I raised my voice with a helper who did not do what I was doing. And then this 8 year, by that time, he was no longer 8. So he was about 10, 11 years old. He pointed to the calendar. He pointed, Mommy, pointed to the calendar about being proactive. It was really by accident that he learned the 7 Habits at 8 years old, because at that time there was still no 7 Habits for kids, none.
Right.
But you see, I was in PNG, and in PNG has scholars. These are the children of employees, okay, and they wanted to give the 7 Habits to their scholars, and these are college kids. We went up to Baguio. PNG had a house in Baguio at that time, for a company house. So we lived there. Guess what? We reached Baguio. There was no electricity. How are you gonna play? The videos there was Betamax.
Betamax yun, di ba? Let's watch a video. Boom! Betamax player.
There were, and then overhead projectors. And no electricity. The whole of Baguio, no electricity. So I had to tell stories, everything, and using, at that time, flip charts. Everything flip charts. And since they had nothing to do, kasi my children, I brought them also because they had nothing to do. It was vacation time. This boy, some of my children were just sitting there in the sofa and observing and watching. That's how they learned the 7 Habits.
Osmosis again.
Yes.
Osmosis. And of
modeling.
course, when the 7 Habits really started being given to teens, they took it. In fact, 3 of my children conduct 7 Habits. 3. Now,
yes.
You know that. You probably know Mardy.
Of course.
Mardy, yes. And Mitzi used to do the 7 Habits. Used to be the one to do 7 Habits for teens. He used to, but she's really a teacher. Okay. Wow. And of course, there's Luigi. So the
yes. Hi guys.
Are they there?
No, we don't know. But, sending it out to the airwaves. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that, Lirio.
how that
And then you
being
see it,
open to
and then you
advice,
see it in their
actually.
language. Huh?
That's true.
We're gonna have a vacation. Okay, we're gonna spend vacation. Somebody asks, "What's our end in mind?" Okay, and then somebody, well, Marty is very, very organized, so she's the one who makes the timeline, when, what to do, when, where.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that big tip, next time you guys, when you go on vacation, ask first, what's our end in
What's the end in mind?
What's your end in
Yeah.
mind? That's true.
I would
That's
say, in
true.
fact, when you do anything, what's the end
What's
in
the
mind?
end in mind?
Always, what's the end in mind?
Yeah, have you, like, for example, have you been in, as our production team readies the next question, right? I mean, have you been to like a vacation where someone says, I just want to rest and relax, but then the itinerary is packed full? Ouch.
You bring
What's
that
the end in mind?
twist.
What's the end in mind?
Yeah, yes. Oh, we've had so many family trips before.
Okay.
But then okay, one of the things before is simply lang yung Baguio before we go Holy Week, Baguio. When they were small, it's not a problem. My mother-in-law had a house in Baguio, so no problem. Okay? As they grew older, teenagers na, Holy Week, hahanapin mo, you don't know. Where did they go? 1 year lang yon. The following year, I said, okay, I know you want to have time for your friends, but these are the times when I expect us to be together. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay, on Holy Thursday, that's the last supper. We will have a good supper together. Out. We'll eat out. Okay. Nice. Good Friday is the time for Stations of the Cross, confessions, okay, and the services. All the services, okay, we have to be there. Saturday, you're free. Okay? Easter Sunday, after Mass, we will have a good lunch together, and then you will have free time if you wish.
Mhm.
So it's really making a schedule,
Right.
a schedule.
Okay. That's another big tip that has worked
Yes.
also for me, guys.
For vacation.
Yeah, make a schedule, set
You have to make a
expectations
schedule.
beforehand.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
Set
Set
expectations.
expectations. Clarify expectations.
Okay, so
Okay.
Lirio, we have a next question. This is an interesting one, right? And so how do you tell your boss na pabago-bago yung isip niya? That he seems to lack planning. Hindi daw Teka. Hindi ito yung tipo, okay, I made a mistake, ito gawin natin. Tapos ganun ulit. So same mistakes all over. So basically, so the basic question is, how do I give feedback to my boss?
That's tough.
That's tough.
very tough. And I have handled that question with other participants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. In the first place, okay, your boss does something good, right? Everyone always does something good. God never does created trash. First thing is notice the good in others. Notice the good in others, and when they do something good, praise them, affirm them. Affirm them. Even your boss, this was really good, it made me feel blah, 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 or that particular decision was really good. The people felt blah, 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 okay, it was effective, etc. Give affirming feedback. Always. Start with that. And what I'm telling you now, these pointers apply to whether it is your boss or anybody else in the organization, okay? Including people at home. Okay. Notice what they do good. In psychology, we call that reinforcing feedback. Reinforcing, it is affirmations. Okay. When they see that you have noticed good things, when the time comes that you need to give constructive or redirecting feedback, they will listen because they know you see both sides. In the first place, when you give affirming feedback, positive, you're building your emotional bank account.
Yes.
Yeah. So next time you speak, they will listen more to you. Okay?
If you would share, Lirio, to some of our listeners who might not be familiar with that concept, what's the emotional bank account, and why do I want to contribute?
All right, the emotional bank account is a metaphor of Stephen Covey. He's very fond of metaphors. Okay, it represents trust, the trust between two persons. Okay, so trust is like a bank account, but it's emotional bank account, meaning I have to make deposits. I avoid withdrawals. What would be a withdrawal would be breaking a promise, or being unkind, okay, being disloyal. But what are deposits are kindness, words of thanks, and even apologies would be a deposit, something good. Okay, when I appreciate someone, I say thank you. Okay, and I give something. Even gifts are emotional bank account. I know the last time we talked about the five languages of love.
Yes.
Yeah. So words, gifts, time. Mukhang hindi nyo nakuha yata yung time. Time is a gift, ha? Okay. Service, and touch. Okay, those are the five. And words are very, with your boss, words. Yeah. Don't be shy. Affirm the person. Now, pabago-bago yung isip. Okay. I would go and say, okay, boss, tell me. Yesterday you told me this. Okay, today this is tell me. Okay. Tell me, please help me understand which is really your priority. Or sometimes your plate is full and they keep adding last minute things. Okay, they keep adding more tasks to you. I would share. If you have a plan, you made your plan. Okay, I would go. Look, you gave me. These are the things that's occupying me now. This is my task list. This is my plan for the week. And now you're giving me this assignment. Can you please help me prioritize? Which one can I delay so that I can do this one that you want me now to do?
Yeah.
Seek their help.
So like treat the boss, or begin to see your boss as like a participant or a partner here, and not as a problem, because that's what the statement is looking to me.
No, don't see
like,
the person. Never see anybody as a problem.
Yes.
You see people with problems. Okay? Huh?
Amen.
No, there is no problem person. There are only people. There are only people with problems.
Or with challenges, perhaps.
Yes, with challenges.
Ako, if I may add, agree with everything that Lirio said there. And I like the bringing in of the emotional bank account and building that level of trust, so that there will be a greater chance that this person will listen. And definitely, as we all, I think the three of us agree, at the very start of this question, it's tough, particularly because this person is your boss. And it's hard enough speaking up to your boss, especially if it's feedback, which will be about his or her behavior. And I think I'll echo something that we mentioned a few times already earlier. I think it would help also to have a clear end in mind and to share what the end in mind is when we have this conversation. So it's not about criticizing. It's not about, obviously there is some emotional, I'll just call it baggage. And I completely understand. It's frustrating. You put all of this work into one thing and then your boss goes, ay, ito na lang gawin natin. There's a lot of stuff that would not be mentionable here. But if at the end of the day, it causes delays, for example, or you're not going to meet a deadline, or it's increased cost, then I think it would be worth it to sit down and say, boss, can we agree on, or can we talk about where do we want to go? What's our end in mind here? Whether it's for the old direction, the new direction. And then if he or she says something like, gusto ko magawan tama, then maybe just come up with the consequences and say, okay, boss, we can do that, but these will be the consequences. timing. It will start conflicting with other projects or other directions that are already in play. You might also mention if there is team frustration building up, you might also share and say, the team is also getting a bit frustrated with all of the different things and the rework that we're doing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And if it's asking you to do something that requires less time, finish it faster. In any task or project, there are 3 variables. Okay, 3 variables: time, quality, and cost.
Yes.
Time, quality, and cost.
Okay.
And cost. So if he wants to crush time, okay, then there will be, I like what you said about that there will be consequences.
Right.
Okay. You may have to pay overtime. I'm going to get other people to help me. You will have to pay, we will have to pay them overtime. And if you still want quality, now, I'm sure you will want quality.
Quality.
Yeah. But so which is most important?
Right. Can't have all 3. No, you can't have all 3, especially when it's crunch time.
Yeah, what I'm getting here is just be upfront and spell it out. Be articulate as best as you can.
Yes.
Stick to the facts and be clear. Kasi yung ganito, hindi nadadaan sa osmosis to. I've seen one too many coaches of mine bring kasi, di ba? Bring a situation na, paano ko mapapa-feel? Ano to? Parang magic, you do something and then nagigets ng boss mo na, ay, ayaw pala na yun. Di ba? No, you gotta spell it out.
But hold off on the corrosive language. I mean, just keep it to a...
And let me share something. Even when I was a boss managing other people, yes, it was my responsibility that I would see more of what's happening. But the reality is there are times where I'm not seeing everything. So there's an opportunity for you here to actually come up and share your perspective because that could be a blind spot.
Yes. And I think
can you help me understand this?
Yes.
I'd like to clarify whether my understanding of your expectations is right. Okay?
Yes.
So help me. This is what I thought was important for you. Is it?
Lirio, paano kung pabago-bago nga talaga yung understanding ng bosses? I'm just changing my mind every day.
And I think, which is possible, no? And perhaps you can jump in and
maybe he had new information.
Right.
Okay.
He got new information. So understand what is the reason. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, agree on the end in mind.
Yes.
What is our end in mind? Yeah. Find out what is really the end in mind.
And I like what Lirio said earlier on the 3 variables. So if, for example, the answer of the boss is we want to do this perfectly, then you go back and say, okay, so the primary criterion is quality. So are we flexible on time and cost? And if the answer is yes, then okay, maybe there's a bit more leeway there. And when it comes to the emotional side, I'm pretty sure there's a part of us which wants to say, ang labo naman itong taon to. But instead of saying that, perhaps you can say, I'm feeling a bit confused. Which is essentially the same thing, but one is judging the other person and the other one is simply saying, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah, because it could be your expectations versus, because the boss might come out and say, no, it's really the speed. Eh. So kahit yung quality hindi basta malabas lang natin, okay na tayo doon. Diba? Then okay, fine, now you know.
Yes, now you know. And then you say, okay, so boss, is this the final direction? Because we need to go full speed ahead on this in order for us to meet the timing.
Speed nga eh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So again, so many tips here.
But I think that's a very realistic question. I think many people go through this experience of changing direction, especially in big organizations where sometimes you don't even know where the direction is coming from. It just sort of keeps coming down.
Or even in smaller organizations where a change in an environment can be, but the whole company shifts already.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And that's happening now.
Yes, absolutely everywhere. And I think that's where communication is important. So if the boss doesn't say what the background is, then it's worth asking. Where is this coming from? Where do we want to go?
Always please help me understand.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Always, please help me understand. Seek help.
Alright. Okay, thank you.
The thing there is, as Filipinos, yes lang tayo ng yes. That there's a tendency to just say yes and yes, without being realistic about how clear are we on the task.
Right. Or
Diba?
I think
na parang nahihiyang magtanong.
Yes.
Sometimes nahihiyang magtanong, baka kala niya tanga ako.
right.
So
Okay.
paano yun,
No,
Lirio? How,
no.
and maybe we can set that, as the stage for our, as our last topic of conversation before we wrap up. So how do we go about that? Because that's, but in my experience, yes, that's not just present, that's not just present in companies, but it's somehow I'm shy to admit it. It's culture. There are even company cultures where people outright tell you, "Wag ka na lang magtanong." The quote, "Less talk, less mistake," is dogma for some companies. And yet here we are telling people to be transparent, to not say yes, and to be clear about the facts. So where do we begin to make the shift, Lirio? Kasi for some of our audience, this could be a big ask for them. They're not coming from a space where they might not have experienced the 7 habits at work, not like we have. So what's a tip that you can share? Where can they begin to make that shift?
Filipino culture din ang sagot natin dyan eh.
Filipino
din. Kasi sa atin, the reason why we don't want to ask is hiya. Or smooth interpersonal relationships, yes na lang. Kuminsan nga, I experienced that. Have you ever experienced that? Well, these are helpers. Pakikuha yung ganon. Tapos, matagal. Babalik. Ano nga ba yung pinapakuha mo? Okay. It's part of pakikisama, di ba? It's also part of pakikisama to be able to deliver what needs to be done.
Right.
But to deliver, you need to clarify expectations.
That's true.
So it's also, and then that's one. Part of pakikisama. Marunong umintindi. That's another one, no? Magpakatotoo tayo, okay? And so if we live those values, those are actually Filipino values, then things will come easier. Okay? Huwag kang mahiyang magtanong. Huwag tayong mahiyang magtanong.
Yes, Lippy, sorry.
No, I mean, that little tidbit of huwag mahiyang magtanong and saying that to other people is so Filipino to the point where, right, it's an advertisement for a drug company out there. They made it their slogan. Huwag mahiyang magtanong. Kasi tama eh. It's predominant in our culture na nahihiyang magtanong.
Yeah, huwag mahiyang magtanong. Okay, sino ito ba? This actress. Okay, ano pa?
And I think, if I may add, no, Lippy, when you introduced the follow-up, you said, no, sometimes it's cultural. Just don't ask. Just let it be. And I think my perspective on that, and of course this comes with some experience, would be if we hold back on asking questions and clarifying, but if we find ourselves being resentful, for example, or we find ourselves judging the people, then I think it's a sign that there's a question that's begging to be asked. And if we don't ask that question, then it's on us, the reason why we're so resentful. Because if all we do is say yes to that next job, to that next task, and we say, oh, sige, oo. And when we turn around, we say, akala mo naman, robot yung kausap mo, then I think it's on us that we didn't speak up. Or as Lirio said earlier, bring out the list of tasks and say, which one is the highest priority? Which one can go lower? Because if we don't do that, then it's us, I guess, abdicating or sort of giving up our right.
Yeah, giving it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Surprisingly, we've been here for an hour. And so, Lirio, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but I think we've covered pretty much around 4 questions with a few follow-ups, tied-in questions there. The way we usually wrap up these conversations is we ask ourselves the question, what is the connection? What is the connection we're seeing across the different questions and the different topics we've discussed this afternoon? So I think that's worth asking here as well. What would be the connection? What is that thread that connects pretty much everything that we've discussed this afternoon?
For me, it's the end in mind. It started with you asking me, okay, about what keeps me going, okay, and then so that's what's my end in mind, and then how I'm able to transmit our values, our goals to our children. Always, what's the end in mind is to help them. Okay, to help them become better, but that's the end in mind. But the osmosis is just the way, okay. And then the same way with conversations. Okay, how to understand each other. Always, it starts with what's my end in mind in this conversation. When I listen, what's my end in mind? Always. My intention is always important. And when I help others, when I try to, to bring out in a conversation, what's the purpose of that conversation? Is it to resolve an issue, or first seeking to understand that person? And so the way we see that person, we see others, and the way we see the situation, and our intention in that conversation, it's still what's your end in mind. Okay, it's a good relationship, and to have a good relationship, you have to listen. That's your end in mind. Okay? To be able to help the person, that's your end in mind. And finally, in this last one, regarding how do you give feedback to your bosses? Again, what's your end in mind? Okay? You want to help the situation. You have to help the boss. You want to help yourself. You want to help yourself to be able to do a good job. A good job. And this is why you ask the boss what is most important. It's still the end in mind. Okay? In terms of the project, that keeps shifting, you go back. What's our end in mind? Is it more quality? Is it more cost? Is it more timing and all that? For me, that's the one that ties it all up. What is very, very important is really the purpose.
Agree.
The goal. Your own personal goal also.
Nice.
Lippy, would you like to add anything? Well, what's your...
You know what I'm adding, apart from that, which is a common thread, for me, it's how we look at people. You know, what the phrase that weighed a lot for me today was, we don't look at people as problems, but look at people, look at these people as people with problems or people with challenges. Because I feel that little change would shift a lot of these different, situations and questions that we throw. There's a huge difference to how you're responding to this situation if you're looking at the person as the problem or as a problem versus looking at the situation with the person that you're talking to as having a challenge or as having a problem.
Right.
And they might need your help on that.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
What about you, Pao?
Well, I'll be honest, I'll be transparent. The moment Lirio said begin with the end in mind, part of me was saying, you should have been the first to share.
Yeah, that's it, right?
That's it right there. But if I were to add something, I guess it would be, jumping off what you mentioned, Lippy, about how we see people. I think the one other thing I'm seeing here is also a sense of self-awareness for the role we play in the situation. For example, if it's about our boss constantly changing direction, paulit-ulit na lang, then maybe it's the role we play not having brought it up, not having had the courage to ask questions. Or yung kanina, I think the first question we tackled was the other one not reciprocating. Then maybe it's our role of not saying, this is what I need right now. I just need you to listen, and that's all. So it's the role we play in the situations we find ourselves in. So I guess it's a sense of self-awareness as well, that we aren't victims. we are active players and we have influence on the things that happen in our lives and the situations we find ourselves in.
And a lot of it is really it was in our mind, no?
It's our paradigms.
It's our paradigm. Like this pandemic.
Yes.
Like not being senior citizen, not being able to go out. I have, I can hear my husband also has his Zoom friend with his group, and they're all cursing the situation. Hindi na ako makalabas. For me, being this quarantine, I see it as protection. I see it as positive. It's protection. Okay, so it's the way you see it.
Yeah.
Hey.
Nice. Thank you, Lirio. Thank you so much for what you've shared, for bringing your experience, and the youth. See, age is just a number, guys. The
That's true.
Energy
That's true.
That you've brought into our conversation, and we've noticed. No, thank you for sharing a lot of practical application tips. How you've applied the 7 Habits, and the 7 Habits is a program that we also run online. Lirio still facilitates, so if you're interested, you can go to our Facebook page and sign up, and you never know, Lirio might be your facilitator.
I think all 3 of us do, along with many other
many facilitators.
Yes.
Yeah, already.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
I train facilitators.
That's true.
So Lirio
I
trained
can
all of
train.
us. all of us had to go through the discerning eye of Lirio
of Miss
Mapa.
Lirio Mapa.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And I give you feedback.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Yes.
Definitely, Lirio does give feedback. Very, very useful feedback. And Lippy, I'll echo what you said there. Very practical sharing from Lirio this afternoon. So while, yes, Lirio is our master facilitator, she does pretty much put that stamp of approval on anyone who wants to facilitate with us. A lot of what she shared this afternoon is really based on your own personal life, if you'll notice. It's not theoretical. Yes, there are some components where we shared formulas and ideas, but really at the end of the day, it's about applications, how Lirio herself has applied a lot of this in her life. And I think she was honest enough to say that it's been a learning experience, learning journey for her.
Me, learning, especially, I'll tell you why it's a learning experience.
Yes, please.
Yung empathic listening, and facilitating, because I started out as a teacher. I have taught nearly all levels. Of course, including graduate school. I've been a guest. I've been a guest professor in Ateneo Graduate School and LaSalle Graduate School also. Guest lang naman, no, not regular. But I have taught all levels. Now, I get to facilitation. What's the tendency for a teacher? Is to teach, right? To tell. Tell, especially when you're teaching history, math, okay? English composition.
Yeah.
There's a right way of doing it. So you're telling. But when I started they started asking me in Assumption to teach Christian living, iba na yan. Hindi na yan puro tell. Okay. But to facilitate is different. I have had to learn. How to stop telling, but to start eliciting.
Yes.
Eliciting. Facilitating is different. Yeah, very different. Okay.
Well, so it's been an orange change.
It's a lot of empathic listening.
Listening,
when
absolutely.
You facilitate. When you facilitate, it's empathic listening. Because for a facilitator, questions are the best tool.
That's true. So, before we wrap this up, Lirio, Lippy, anything else you'd like to share as a closing remark, so to speak, or as a
for me, this has been a pleasure, Lirio. We'll have you on the show again sometime.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I'd be delighted.
So for those of you, our audience members who participated, who shared your questions, thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing up your own questions. We do hope this has been insightful for you. Lirio, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Yes, of course.
Can you please give them my email address so that if there are questions there that I have not answered, in the chat box. You also give me a copy of the questions in the chat box. And if you give them my email address, then I will also answer their questions online.
Okay.
Is that
Sure,
okay?
we'll have our production team find a way
Yes.
to share with that on the Facebook and on the channel. So if you're watching this, look at the comment section. You might be able to see
Can we
that.
PM the email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So the people can get in touch with you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you for that
I'd love
generous offer. All right.
Hey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lippy.
Thank you, Lirio.
And
Thank you.
the production team. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you to all of you who have joined us this afternoon for today's conversations. We do hope that you will join us again next month. Lippy and I look forward to these sessions, as infrequent as they may be right now. We certainly enjoy them, and we certainly share hearing from you and hearing your questions. Here at FranklinCovey, as we always say, the one mission that we have, and since we discussed it extensively throughout the past hour and a half, our end in mind really is to help you, each one of you, organizations, individuals, to achieve and to move you closer to what matters most to you, that which is most important to you. And we do hope that this afternoon's conversation has helped in that sense. So Lirio, thank you again. Lippy, anything you'd like to add before we part? Okay.
Live long and prosper. People.
Live long and prosper.
See you next time.
And stay healthy and safe, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again.
God love you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.